Hello and welcome into the KE Report. Shad and Corey here, getting an update from Elemental Altus Royalties, traded on the TSXV under the ticker ELE, and on the OTCQX under the ticker ELEMF. And we're joined today with the CEO of Elemental Altus Royalties, Fred Bell. And Fred, it's great to get you on the show to get an update. You got some interesting news out that we can kick this interview off with, and it's an interesting transaction where you're acquiring two different tungsten royalties from Cornish Metals, the main one being the Mactung Project in Canada. Now, tungsten is an element that we don't talk as much about on the show, but why don't you unpack not just the transaction, but the thinking behind acquiring these two assets in the tungsten market?
Hi, Shad. Thank you for having us on. Look, we did quite a lot of work on the tungsten market before going down this route, and I think partly to ensure we were familiar and really understood it. And the majority of our assets are gold and copper, to remind your audience. And I think what we saw here is in some ways similar to the Kwale royalty, which was one of the first royalties we bought. And that was a mineral sands royalty. And it wasn't something that was straight down the fairway in terms of familiarity with commodities, but it was a great, great asset earner for us. And it paid us, order of magnitude $300,000 to $400,000 a year. We paid $1 million for it. And it paid us that for 7 plus years. And I think we look at this, and at a really high level, this is an asset it had the permitting done, it had an environmental report done in Canada, and it's got the potential to be paying us, on the basis of sort of $2 to $3 million a year in revenue once it's up and running, and again has the potential to run for decades. So for us, it's one of those really compelling opportunities that you see. And even where you're not familiar with it as a commodity and as an asset, when you put it into our portfolio, I think it's a really good fit and can actually be a really material contributor in terms of revenue going forwards.
So, Fred, can you give us any insights on how the operator here, Fireweed Metals, which is now a Lundin company, how they're planning on moving this asset forward when you also combine that, look, this asset is really connected to their Mac Pass project as well. How does that company look to move, especially the Mactung project forward, but that overall district?
Yeah, look, I think from what has been said publicly, it's clear that Mactung has had a lot of development work done on it historically. It's had an environmental report done, it's had a lot of studies, and it's significantly advanced in the permitting phase. So there is, I think, a pretty clear pathway forward to actually fast track development of Mactung. And in today's world, tungsten is an absolutely critical and strategic commodity. And this project has the resource and the grade to be a key cornerstone supplier of tungsten to, you could say, Western markets for decades to come. And so from that perspective, they're going to be pretty incentivized to advance the project really as fast as they can. And for us as a royalty holder, that's great. And I think they've spoken to the fact as well that this is an asset that may well attract government support and government funding, being one of the critical minerals in North America. And that is only going to help to really get the momentum and advance the project.
Yeah, Fred, there's a lot of interest in strategic metals from both the US and Canada right now. And so if they could get some of that government funding, I'm sure that would help the cause. But I guess I'd love you to unpack what a unique royalty this is to have picked up, because we were talking before recording today that if this was a gold asset and it had this much de-risking done, this much permitting work done, a major company behind it, there'd be royalty companies fighting over this. Maybe just speak to what this would mean if this was a gold royalty, but put it into tungsten terms.
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I think that, look, if you were to say there was a revenue range of, call it $2 to $3 million a year in terms of revenue from this asset, and that's for something that could have up to a 50-year mine life, I think at that production rate, and it's got its permitting done, and there's clear government support for it as well. That's something that would probably be in the top lists of targets for a lot of companies. And this is, I think, one of the reasons why it's great to have a portfolio like ours, where we are relatively straightforward gold and largely copper assets. And that gives us the flexibility to take advantage of, you might say, niche opportunities like this, where it's not well understood, where probably a lot of people discount it on day one because they're not familiar with the commodity. And we're in a position where I think we can do a really smart deal for us at a really attractive price, and we can use our existing cash to do it. And we can stage the payments, and it gives us optionality on a project that I think is going to have some really material catalysts over the coming 6 to 12 months. And going forwards, this really could be a critical asset in providing secure tungsten supply for Western countries for many years to come.
Fred, let's talk about the purchase price then. It's $3 million US up front on signing, $1.5 million payable within 12 months after that date of closing, and also an obligation of $1.5 million US of deferred payments due to Teck. How do you go about putting that initial price tag of, let's just say, $4.5 million payable within 12 months? How do you put that price tag on an asset like this? And what's this obligation to pay Teck $1.5 million? When is that due?
Yeah, it's a good question. Maybe I'll start with the history of it, which was that Teck originally had this royalty, and it was sold to Cornish Metals, I think, going on about 8 years ago. And that was part of the agreement they had with Teck. And Cornish Metals, over those 8 years, have really advanced, and they're focused on a project here in the UK in Cornwall. And these royalties they had were no longer core for them. And so I think it represented a really good opportunity for us. And the payment to Teck is due on an investment decision. So that is, at that stage, I think this will look like a very different project when they're actually putting capital forward to build the mine. And for us, in terms of how we look at these, I think for us, we're looking primarily from a value perspective when we're looking at assets like this. And we did a lot of work understanding the tungsten market and understanding the asset and understanding the history of how it came to being in this position. I think all of those were really encouraging for us to be able to put an offer forwards. And I think it should be a good deal for Cornish. It enables them to focus on their key projects. And for us, we're using some of our cash flow this year to build out the project portfolio and pipeline with an asset that actually has a very high chance of going into production in Canada with the Lundins. And in production, it will be $2 to $3 million a year revenue asset for us, hopefully for decades to come. So actually some real material value there.
Well, Fred, it's a pretty exciting acquisition. I guess we should also just mention that you did pick up another tungsten project along with us, the Cantung deposit, and that was a previously operating tungsten mine in the Northwest Territories. Maybe just speak briefly about that project that you also picked up 1% NSR on.
Yeah, we don't talk too much about the Cantung Project royalty in the announcement, but it was actually the mine that North American Tungsten were operating when they did the feasibility and they did the study work on Mactung. And when the tungsten prices crashed in, I think it was 2016, 2015, and that was really supply from China that did it. Then Cantung stopped production, and likewise with Mactung. So we're now in a world where I think a lot of countries have woken up to the fact that they need a base level of Western supply of critical minerals. And Mactung is uniquely well positioned to provide that. And alongside that royalty, we got a royalty, another one that Cornish held as part of the package deal on Cantung. So look, it's great to get, you might call them lottery tickets, but to get lottery tickets on previously operating mines in Canada, we're happy to add those into the portfolio. And it really has no holding cost and very little additional cost for us.
So, Fred, I guess big picture, look, you said that this could be a large producing royalty, the Mactung project. This royalty for the company, permitting, some of that work has already been done. It's in the hand of the Lundin company. is there a general time frame of when people can think that that funding decision could come and that payment due to Teck, and when this could actually move into some sort of construction? Any ballpark time frames for us?
Look, I think we will probably base what we say off Fireweed, since they're the ones really driving the project. And I think what they have said around it is that there is a really clear pathway to production. And they have talked about the final licensing and permitting happening in 2026, with construction starting in 2027, 2028. So, I mean, look, from that side, there's an awful lot we understand that's going on to advance the project right now. And the key advantage is a lot of the historical work that's been done there. So I think 2024, 2025 going to be a really key period to continue advancing Mactung and put it in the best possible position to take it forwards. And I suspect over the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to be able to see part of that development and part of that progress happening. And, you know, that then once you have that timeline start to clear up, but it's certainly something that they already have spoken to potential construction starting in as little as 3.5 years from today.
Well, Fred, just before we wrap up today, there was one little news item that we wanted to get to from July 4th that you put out, and that's just an update on the Diba development. This is with Allied Gold, where they're going to be bringing this project towards production. This was the asset we've talked a lot about in the past, but you had an update for the market. I just wanted to give you a chance just to give everybody listening an update there.
Yes, thanks. Look, Diba is, I think Allied had guided that they would be starting production in Q2 around the mid-year point. So I think very much looking forward to getting an update from them there. And what was really interesting for us is that this is a transaction that we closed at the end of last year. And since we closed that transaction, Allied, they have declared maiden reserves at the project. They have built a haul road to the satellite deposit from the existing mine. They have added in new resource ounces at the project. And then they have announced that their 12,000 meter drill program that they are doing there is actually focused around this project in Diba. So look, in a short space of time, they have probably done more work on the project than has happened in the last, call it 5 to 8 years. So they have absolutely accelerated the timeline. They're putting it into production now, and it's going to be, you know, all of that means it's going to be not just a material income producing royalty for us in the short term, but actually the more work they do, the longer that mine life becomes. So it really has the potential to be a much more meaningful asset for us going forwards. And the exploration success and the investment they're putting in there is really encouraging.
Well, congrats to the team, Fred. I know that's an exciting royalty that's going to be hopefully pretty soon a cash flowing royalty for the company. But as you say, the more they drill and the more they expand it, they're just increasing the longevity of it and the mine life and even maybe the throughput. So all good things there from the Diba project that Allied Gold is working on. And if people want to follow along with all the news from Elemental Altus Royalties, definitely click on the link below this interview. Takes you right over to the company website to the news section. Fred, keep us up to date as more news hits the markets. We'll get you back on for an update. And as always, looking forward to our next conversation.
Much appreciate it. Thanks, Shad.